afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. As we know, Assocham is celebrating 100 years, and it's only befitting that we talk about how to achieve a $5 trillion economy here onwards. And we've got a very interesting panel with us. We've got some startups who are doing wonderful business here in India, and we would like to ask them, especially about the headwinds that the economy is facing right now, and also how we can get onto this growth path, the $5 trillion economy growth path, especially because we've seen the GDP fall from 5% in the last quarter to 4.5%. There has been fall in consumption as well, especially rural consumption, rural demand. So how do we generate all of that and bring India back to the growth path? Before we talk about how India can reach the 5 trillion mark by 2025, let's talk about how each of these businesses are facing problems as a result of the headwinds that the Indian economy and the global economy are facing. And Bejul, if I can begin with you. Consumption has fallen, demand has fallen, GDP has come down to 4.5%. Are investors looking at the India growth story differently right now?
I think for venture capital investors, our investment horizons are typically 8 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a mistake to try and time the market. We are here because we believe in the potential that this market offers. And if you have a year or a couple of years in which growth is slower than one expects, that doesn't change the fundamental attractiveness of a market. Right? This is an economy with incredible potential that is now moving online. And a lot of the companies here are enabled by that shift towards the digital economy. And that's a very, very powerful shift.
Okay, very interesting. So let's move on to our other panelists. Ashneer, we are going to talk about e-commerce, harnessing social media, harnessing the internet as well. But from a fintech point of view, are there certain concerns that you have with the current state of the economy?
My thesis on the current state of economy is that the credit has been squeezed out of the economy, right? So banks whose core job was to extend credit are not extending credit. They've been in a cleanup job for the last 5 years. Because they've been on a cleanup job, NBFCs are becoming illiquid. They are not extending credit, right? So if you take out credit from the market, the economy is going to slow down, as simple as that. So I see that if you have fintechs who can help get the money flowing back again into the economy, right, and at a faster pace, in a more efficient manner than the banks and the NBFCs have done historically, then they can play a crucial part in getting the thing started. But right now, for me, it is all about credit, right? You get the credit back into the economy. That's the only way to get the economy kickstarted.
Amit, if I can talk to you, you're into buses, bus leasing, shuttle services. From your point of view, what impacts your business the most right now?
Yeah, actually, it's better for us because people have less money to spend on, and when that happens, a product which is a 3 rupees a kilometer product wins because people want to conserve capital. They reduce their budget on utilitarian things, so it just works very beautifully in our favor. But on a larger point, what I want to say is that what startups do essentially is bring technology into the mainstream. And technology, like startups, just agents of technology, not the only agents. The large companies also do it. Jio has done it. Google has been doing it. But what they essentially do is they reduce the inefficiencies in the system. They improve consumer experience. They improve access. They generate economies of scale which reduce the prices. And all that leads to better consumption.
And Rahul, do you also feel likewise that all is not gloom? There is enough opportunity and one can make the best of the situation.
In India, in higher education, there are 35 million kids every year. We have 850 universities and 43,000 colleges. 1/3 of these kids are migrants. So they move from one state to another to study. So about 12 million kids a year need a place to stay. The total lodging capacity of our universities and colleges is only 4 million beds. So every year, 8 million kids are staying off campus. So they are staying either in PGs or guest houses or different kinds of unstructured accommodation. So the first issue is, because in India, even though the market is huge, nobody's looked at this sector, is to zone the sector appropriately. The second thing, because the industry doesn't exist, is to put a regulatory framework around the industry so that it's recognized as infrastructure.
Vidit, to get you in at this space, you're in a business. Meesho connects businesses, small businesses with customers via WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram. You do that for businesses across the country. As a result of the slow growth that we've seen over the last 1.5 years now, have you changed gears slightly?
The new economy, the digital economy, is a lot about making inefficient offline supply chain to become more efficient online. So when we look at our market is the 93% of total commerce which is unorganized in these categories. How can we bring that online, make it more efficient? So a lot of what's happening in the macro is not what influencing our growth. A lot of our growth is just about eating into this inefficient supply chain. And in that ways, the opportunity is large enough. I don't think macro winds is gonna change anything. But that said, on our supply side, we have a lot of small manufacturers, workshops. And we've seen in many cases, because these guys before us were still selling offline, they've had in the last 6 months, 9 months, these guys have had great degrowth in their business as compared to last previous year. So there's definitely some headwinds in the overall macro market, and especially in smaller towns and cities, not as much in the larger cities.
Let's also get in Anshu. Anshu, at Magic Pin, have you seen patterns changing, spending patterns changing over the last 1.5 years?
What is transforming or disruptive literally is what we are able to do for millions of small retailers in the country. Think about them. They can't invest on online platforms like Google, Facebook, Instagram. That money just disappears. We all know that. And then for a small retailer, it's not affordable. That inefficiency can't be absorbed. But with us, a merchant can decide to spend 1,000 rupees on marketing. And if on that 1,000 rupees we can give him 4,000 rupees of business, we will give him that 4,000 rupees of business. So again, the idea is that the entire offline retail space is dark in terms of data. The way marketing is being done is still how it was being done maybe 20 years back, right? And the audiences have moved. The audiences are online now. But if it was possible to understand the spread of consumption, what are the transactions that are happening, what is the content of those transactions, and then put together users, retailers and manufacturers and make it efficient for all of them.
So how important is harnessing the strength of social media, the internet, in achieving this 5 trillion growth path?
I think if you, let's just take some specific examples. Today there are 28 billion companies, private companies valued at $1 billion or more that did not exist 10 years ago. Right? These are all companies that have been created targeting the digital economy. Today the largest retailer in the country is digitally native. The largest transportation company in the country is digitally native. The largest hospitality company in the country is digitally native. The largest bus company in the country is digitally native. The largest travel agent in the country is digitally native. And I can go on and on. So certainly I think our belief is that the digital economy is going to produce the largest companies in each of these industries. So therefore, if I think about the role of the digital economy in accomplishing this vision of a $5 trillion economy, I think it is absolutely central to that vision. And it's not that we have to look forward. We can look at the data today. A company like Flipkart that is worth $21 billion, that company didn't exist 10 years ago. Or maybe it just about started at that time.
There are so many foreign companies, be it in United States or in Europe, who want to come to India, who want to partner with Indian companies because of the sheer size of the market, sheer size of the population. Is the fintech space getting enough attention? And what would you expect from the government on that front?
The only thing fintechs would ask for is that the regulations should not change overnight, right? Like I think, we can manage everything else, right? It's not the
Policy certainty?
Policy certainty is the most important thing, because even when we go out and raise funds, right, everything gets ticked off. right? The only thing on a fintech is saying we don't know where the government is going to go with regulation, right? So you do Aadhaar, then you go back on Aadhaar as KYC, right? So there are multiple of these things on which we need clarity.
Amit, do you also feel that this policy uncertainty sometimes tends to hamper growth, hamper investment plans?
Yeah, it does, but in our case, it is not policy uncertainty. Policy is very clear as far as like we operate under Motor Vehicles Act, which provides for contract carriage under which we operate. It's just that the perception that the world is carrying, not the law per se, but the people who are managing compliance, they are carrying a perception which is at least 2 decades old. The law changed somewhere in the middle, and they have not been upgraded. So those are the things, those perceptions create a lot of challenge when it comes to us, because ours is a business which is out there on the road, our buses are there.
Rahul, to come to you, over the last 1 year, we've seen several measures that the government has taken. A real estate fund, they've tried to infuse money into NBFCs as well. You've got the corporate tax announcement. Has this helped in turning around things? Can this work in isolation, or are we going to need more steps from the government to enable startups to contribute to India's growth story?
Sure, see, specifically around startups, or if I was to just take an example of the economy, we could consider the economy like a car on 4 wheels. We need, one wheel is investment, another wheel is exports, another wheel is consumption, and the 4th wheel is capital availability. And then the car needs to have robust, good quality, so the quality of the asset. Then the car needs to have a dashboard to be able to see, different trends. And then the fuel in the car is effectively labor. So do we have the right talent availability? Is the infrastructure right? Do we have the right stats to know where we are going? Is there and the wheels is there capital availability, promoting investment? Is there consumer spend, and is there exports? Now we could look at this as a microcosm also for startups. This means is there an enabling environment in place? So we don't have to go too far. Similarly for startups, is there a support environment availability, which would also enable, access to capital? Number one. Number two, because India is a land of opportunity across multiple spectrums, there is need for a dialogue with the relevant stakeholders to identify what are the key measures. Like for rental housing, the key measure is real estate. If there is no zoning properly, then how would it impact? So first we identify how are we going to be supporting the startup ecosystem horizontally, then vertically, all of these specific industry domains, what kind of support do they need? And then third is also recognizing this nationwide, like there is a great support structure available, whether it be Assocham or let's say other industry bodies for MSME. That's really helped India get there.
And Vidit, what about you? As far as your business is concerned, where do you see growth coming from? Rural consumption has slowed down, and that remains a cause for concern. Which pockets of the country do you think will contribute to the growth story of India in the days to come, and to the startup story as well?
If you look at the startup sector, right now a lot of great companies which are not inspired by companies in the West or China have come up who are solving problems for people beyond the top 6 or 8 cities. Right? We are definitely one of the examples, and that's where I think the next decade is going to be focused on how do we solve bottom-up problems, understanding the audiences in all these places. A lot of people do not understand all the problems that exist. So I'll tell you one thing that we hear very regularly. So if you are with the new GST regime, GST has been great for e-commerce. A lot of things have become much more smooth and efficient. But for example, if you are a home-based business, you want to sell online today, you cannot sell beyond your state if you do not have a GST registration. And a lot of these, for example, women, will not get support from the husbands and families to go out and get GST registration, right? So now they can't access, for example, social media to start their business. Essentially, government is saying you can't do business beyond your state. Whereas if you go online, how do you limit someone from outside your state, like checking out a product which could be very unique that you have built in your house, right? So essentially, you are with the new GST regime, you're discouraging all of these guys to come in and participate into the economy. So I'm saying some of these issues needs to be solved out.
Okay.
If offline I'm allowed to not get a GST until I get to 40 lakhs worth of revenue in a year, why not the same thing happening in online world as well? Because then you ask these small businesses to come online and start selling like right on day one. It's not just that you become big enough offline and then come online.
Simplification of taxes, do you think it's critical? Simplification of the tax structure, simplification of filing your taxes, is it critical to India's growth story as well?
Absolutely is the answer, and not just for taxes, but across the board. If I draw a thread through everything that was said here, a lot of it was to do with how do we make sure that the right intent that the government has is implemented in the same spirit. A lot of times it's complexity, it is the interpretation, and it's a bunch of such things. If I have to add one more example, there is an upcoming conversation around data protection. Absolutely the right thing to talk about, and to make sure that people are in charge of what data is available. But that given in the hands of someone who doesn't understand what the intent is and how to implement can just go in a different direction.
Talking about data, it's always said that data is the new gold, and the government right now is looking at a new data protection law. Do you see that as an enabler, or do you think there will be concerns around that?
Companies and investors will adjust to whatever the regulatory environment is, and provided there is certainty. If you don't like the regulation in a particular area, you're free to decide whether or not you want to start a company there, or whether you or not you want to invest. I think what is far more challenging is when the goalposts are shifted halfway through the match, right? Because you've made an investment, or as an entrepreneur, you've made a commitment on the basis of a certain understanding. And then 3 years in or 5 years in, things change that can radically change your business. I think that's problematic.
Yeah. Talking about things like data localization, this has been a big point of concern between in the India-US relationship as well. Do these norms, do laws around data impact businesses, impact fintech space right now? Would you like more policy clarity on that space?
I'm not a major proponent of data privacy or data localization. I think like what's data localization, right? If I go and travel abroad and I swipe my card, right? Where should that data sit, right? It's an Indian bank. The merchant is foreign, and you have got a Visa, Mastercard, which are global networks out there, right? So I think in today's world, I just don't get data privacy at all.
Okay. And Amit, do you feel that when it comes to data protection, we must bring long-term clarity very soon? Because does this come up when you are speaking to prospective investors? Do these issues come up over data protection, data localization, what you're doing with your data?
Yeah. I think where we are, these questions don't come up. Having said that, so they are not directly impacting us. But I think there needs to be better frameworks wherein data can be leveraged by startups, by other businesses to deliver better experience and deliver better efficiency in the system. So just to give you one example about data, telecom companies have data about which tower, through which tower you are accessing the network. So they have your essentially footprint around the clock, which is very, very personal data. If it is released for any individual, it has its consequences and shouldn't happen. But as an aggregate, that is very valuable. It allows us to know, how are the people moving in a city, not a particular person per se, but how the people moving, which will allow us to build better, smarter networks. I think you need to kind of just aggregate the data, anonymize it, and make it available. It's a very, very powerful. Then data is fuel, then data is gold. Otherwise, it is a risk.
So I think just to sum up what the entire panel has said, that we need policy clarity going forward. the tax structure, filing taxes has to be made easier as well. This is what startups, this is what big businesses also want. And at the same time, we need to harness the power of internet as well. And when it comes to data protection and data laws, we need to make sure that we have the concerns of businesses in mind, but at the same time, we keep in mind concerns and sensitivities of the population as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much to all our panelists.